People say that I'm one of the greats, I'm the one that you love to hate. Shake 'em up like a quake, all your feelings and turn and dispose them like haters I throw away. I'm forever blessed, got the spirit that's wholly controlling me, I ain't gotta coordinate. I just sit back and buckle my bells and I'm ready to blast in the stars of my destination. Melted broadcast, open vision, melted broadcast, open vision, melted broadcast, open vision, melted broadcast, open vision.
Linda Eastburn is an author, filmmaker, and intuitive. Her latest book, Threshold to the Encounters, comes from years of research in the field of alien, Bigfoot, and ghost experiences. Her other books, With Heart and Writing with the Intuitive Wave, are about her life as an intuitive instructor and consultant. She was host of the television and radio show Anomalies, founded the Midwest Research Society, where she took groups on research trips to explore the paranormal. She has spoken at conferences and universities all over the U.S. Her films have played from art houses to movie theaters. Today, she hosts the Linda Eastburn YouTube channel, focusing on creating a platform for others to tell their story.
So how you doing, Linda?
I'm doing great.
Eastburn.
To the show.
Welcome to the Melted Broadcast. It's good to finally have you on. I know we had a hurdle through a couple things to get you on here, especially a couple minutes ago we lost power. It's great to have you on.
Yeah, it's nice to be here. It's a beautiful Sunday afternoon where I am. So
why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into these topics?
Yeah, well, I've been a UFO researcher since like the early 90s, just going way back. I was a hypnotherapist and I worked a lot with people who felt like they had had some kind of experience or abduction by alien beings. So I kind of delved deep into the subject matter from that point of aliens. And it was only a year and a half ago that I was introduced to the Bigfoot phenomena. So that kind of brought Bigfoot and the UFO research I'd done for years together. And I began to notice a correlation between those two characters. A lot of people were having like missing time, unusual light phenomena, orbs and things like that. Just some unusual things that seem to correlate between the two experiences. So I put together a book called Threshold to Encounters, and that was recently released, kind of talking about that. But then I also included a lot about a case I've been working on called Case 841 that has a little bit of everything. It has animal mutilations and missing animals and even black car surveillance, like Men in Black and stuff, in this 10-mile radius where all of these really weird things are happening. And it's over a period of time. It's not like they happened in a year. It was over a fairly long period of time that these things occurred, but still, just looking at how certain locations seem to draw these things in, as well as certain people seem to have multiple experiences with these characters, even ghosts, even hauntings and disembodied voices and things like that. So I've been a long time in the field overall, but a short time in the field with the Bigfoot research.
Okay, awesome. So let's go ahead and back up. You mentioned 841. How did you come upon that? And if you could tell us a little bit about it.
April 1?
841?
Oh, 841. Case 841. Yeah. My
Case 841.
These were people that I knew by and large when I started the research. The first incident actually happened to me. I was, this is a very rural area in Missouri. It's just way out in the boonies. And I was sitting in area of a house, and it was about 10 o'clock at night. My husband was in the garage talking to a gentleman who lived there, and I was just waiting for him. I didn't have anything else to do but look across the gravel road to a pasture across the street. And just beyond that pasture, there was a tree line that was kind of up a hill and kind of up high. And I noticed there was an orange light just above the trees. Well, I didn't have anything else to do. I'm just sitting there waiting. So I'm just observing this orange light. And my first thought was, well, that's probably an airplane. It's just going to go on over, it's going to continue going on in the sky. But it didn't. It just stayed there and hovered over those trees. And then after a while, maybe 10, 15 minutes, it slowly went down behind the tree line. Well, I didn't think much about it until the next day when we went to lunch in that same community. And the people started talking about these 3 cows were mutilated the night before. And one was mutilated right there in that very pasture where I saw this orange light. The other 2 were on farms on each side of that pasture. And no one would have known about this because they call the sheriff, yes. They just wrote it off as a cult activity of some sort. But I thought it was really odd that I saw that orange light at the same time. And then I later found out that these orange lights are associated with animal mutilations. So I may have been observing that at the time. So that was the beginning point. And I just documented everything, just wrote it all down. And then slowly these other stories started coming in. There were 3 men that were at a lake within this 10-mile radius, and they saw this blue donut-shaped craft just skimming over the surface of the lake one night. So they didn't know what it was. They still don't have any explanation as to what it was. But within that same area, there was another UFO that was seen kind of erratically moving in the sky one night. A woman was driving home and saw this really weird light moving around in the sky to the east. And she wasn't the only one who saw it. Numerous people in that community saw this really bizarre light and called the news outlet, and they went out and tried to film it and try to get more information about it, but there was never an explanation as to what that was. The other UFO craft, well, there have been several UFO craft in this vicinity, but one was observed at 4:30 in the afternoon. A woman was walking with her neighbor just down a state road, a blacktop road, when they just passed an intersection and a car went by them, and she turned around. One of the women turned around to wave at that person because she knew them. And she saw at that intersection where that person turned to go right, there was this about the size of an automobile is the way she described it. It was kind of low, about treetop level. It was moving very slowly. It was a silver color, kind of an oblong shaped disc. And it moved very slowly across that intersection to the west. She tried to get her neighbor's attention to turn around and look at this thing. By the time her neighbor turned around, this thing was behind a tree line. But that same night, another neighbor didn't see this craft at all, but another neighbor saw a white light on the ground in the pasture behind their house. Now there's nothing back there. This is all farm country. It's like 4 miles back there before you get to another house. So it's all pasture, it's farm country. No one's ever out there. There'd be no reason for a light to be on the ground back there. But that was the very same night that she saw that craft at that intersection. So there have been numerous other UFO crafts seen in the area. There have been, alien contact there, other missing cattle. There's also been Bigfoot reported in that area. The 3 men who saw the donut-shaped craft go across the lake, one of those men saw a Bigfoot at an intersection. He was driving up to a main road. He came up to the stop sign. He looked over to his right, and there was a Bigfoot walking in the ditch and then crossing over into a wooded area. So, it's one incident after another reported over the years. And some of these happened some time back, but I didn't get word of them until I started doing more research in the area.
So with Bigfoot and these UFO sightings, what do you think the connection is? I've always heard, different theories, but I never did research into Bigfoot, just, the anomalies of UFOs, UAPs. So I'm curious to hear what your take on that is.
Well, I haven't seen a Bigfoot myself, and I certainly haven't seen a UFO with a Bigfoot. So I only have secondhand information to go by.
Yeah.
But out of almost 400 interviews that I've done for my YouTube channel now, that is primarily Bigfoot experiencers that are on that show. I've heard everything from seeing a Bigfoot in a test tube while being abducted by aliens and being on their craft. That, who knows? I mean, it's just one of those things that's what they reported seeing. They kept asking these aliens what, if they made the Bigfoot, if they created them. And they said, no, they didn't make them, but somehow they were researching this Bigfoot. Years ago, there was a craft seen, I think, in Pennsylvania, and it was letting Bigfoot down out of the craft onto the ground. So that was an incident where they were seen side by side. One gentleman that I did an interview with, he had sort of become friends with this clan of Bigfoot in this mountainous area. They kind of knew him, he kind of knew them. They sort of kept their distance, but nonetheless, they knew one another. And he would often walk on a path in this wooded area. One day he was walking on this path and he noticed this large tree had been laid right across the path. And he felt like Bigfoot had probably put it there.
Yeah.
And his first thought was something's going down tonight. So, I don't know what, but they may not want me here in this area. So what does he do? He goes home, he gets his son and another researcher. They drive back out there that night. They park their Jeep down the hill a little ways and they hike up the hill so they get a good perspective of that whole valley. By the time it got dark, there were 12 pair of eye shine around their Jeep down a little bit below that they could see. So there were some serious numbers of Bigfoot down there. And then as they're watching this Bigfoot, kind of roaming around the Jeep, suddenly there's this UFO, this very bright light and moving very quickly, came swooping in from the right and went straight down into the valley below, just way down there. All 12 of those Bigfoot turned around and started just stampeding down that hillside. They said it was just a commotion of noise that they heard. Now, he doesn't know if there was a rendezvous planned and that's why they didn't want him in there, or if they were just curious, and they went down there to check out this UFO in the valley to see what it was. I mean, he doesn't know their intentions or what was going on with that, but that was just what he described that happened that night. So there have been numerous other people that have talked about, the orbs, that Bigfoot can turn into an orb or an orb turn into a Bigfoot. And oftentimes around aliens and UFO craft, there are a lot of orbs and aliens that can kind of transition between a light energy and then a being of some sort.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a correlation as well.
But some of the orbs that we've caught,
Yeah.
we have a lot of video, a lot of pictures, and we're always seeing like faces and objects in these orbs. Like it's not a craft, it's like an actual like a person, or not a person, but like a being or something.
Yeah.
And
There's
yeah, Mary, go ahead.
there's so I'll go out there. So we've started experience the orbs and stuff on July 4th. So sometimes I'm compelled out of my bed at 3 a.m. and say, okay, they're here. And I'll just run out there and I see them. So what I do is I'll take my cell phone, and that's before we got all the equipment we have now, and I would film them and I'd forget about them. And the next day I'm going through them and I'm like, whoa, it's now I've done the same with stars. So stars looked very different from the orbs, but they do change into different things at that moment. And I've seen a lot of grays in there. I've seen almost a feline in there.
Mhm.
It's just random thing. Yeah, it's crazy. So
It
we have
makes
a lot of that.
Yeah, it makes me go back in thinking about Skinwalker Ranch, like all the stuff that they have going on over there. It's it's
Mhm.
just it's out of this world.
It
So
is. And, up at the Sierra camp with that Ron Moorhead, where he got the Sierra sounds that they think is the sound of Bigfoot. But he saw a huge UFO craft in that above him one night. And he also saw the orbs and saw a rod of light that seemed to be very intelligent. It was moving very intelligently through the forest. And several other people that have been out Bigfoot researching in the woods have seen that rod moving around in the woods.
the rod, can you explain it? Like what it looked like?
It's just a light that looks like a rod, and it's horizontal as it moves through the forest, but it's not just an orb, it seems it's a long rod, but it's lit up, kind of like a sword or something, but it's
Oh,
moving
okay.
intelligently through the trees, like it knows where it's going and seems to, it doesn't run into anything and it doesn't pass through the trees, it maneuvers around them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
I've had some of that too in the videos where they're just a long rod and it's all lit up like one whole light. Yeah, I've had that too.
We
Yeah.
actually started seeing tridents in these videos that we're capturing. With these orbs, it's like an actual, the trident the three spikes, like
Mhm.
Yeah.
Poseidon, and we don't know what it means yet. We just, really started seeing them here recently in the past couple of days, but I mean, we still have, a lot of investigating to do. So,
Yeah, there's so much going on out there these days.
yeah. So threshold to the encounters, I see, on your X, your banner, many experience encounters, but few know why. This book takes you down many paths to understand the complexity of what really might be happening. And then you have your bullet points: Bigfoot, alien, and ghost connections, seen through the illusions, time, missing time, and EMF, normal versus paranormal, what you have not been told, mind speak, telepathy and telekinesis, secret societies, and projected reality. Can we go into a couple of these?
Yeah, especially that one on secret societies. Back when I first started doing hypnosis, and this was not long after I was getting involved with the UFO research as well. I started teaching hypnosis, and I had small classes, maybe 12 people in a class. And this one class I had, it was a mix of people, and I had several students. So I decided to do an extra night of practice work for them so they could come up to a normal class material. So every Sunday night, I just offered that for them if they wanted to come, but it wasn't an obligation. There was one man in the class. He was a little bit older, seemed very intelligent, was well educated, and he kept asking questions about mind control. Those were in the regular classes, but this one Sunday night, he came, and he was the only student that actually showed up that night. And he started telling me something, but it was like he would start and kind of start and stop. It was like he was telling me, but he didn't really know for sure if he should tell me or something. So it was all about mind control, and eventually the story sort of came out. But apparently he was married to a woman back east, in the east somewhere, and she was from a family of deep pockets money, just really a
Yeah.
whole family of deep money. And they were part of some organization. He would not tell me the name of the organization, but it was a secret organization that he said I would recognize the name if he did tell me, but he wouldn't say it. And he said because he married into the family, he was brought up the ranks really fast to those top levels where they practiced a lot of occult things. And he said he was one of the people that was receptive to their projections, and they would project things, all kinds of things to him, he said. And he learned how to kind of receive that information. Well, he had long since gotten a divorce. He moved back here in the Midwest where I live, and this is where he was originally from. And he was still getting those projections, he said, and they were becoming more and more common in his life. And he really felt like they were continuing to project these things to him. But this is what he was seeing. He was seeing little aliens in his house. He was seeing UFO craft when he would go outside. He was getting prophetic information planted in his head. He was seeing things in the future. He was seeing like newspaper headlines, things like that. And he felt like he wanted that to stop, is what he was saying. But there was a point when he was telling me all of this that I wasn't sure if he was seeking my help or if he was an informant telling me that this was
Yeah.
possible. I wasn't sure. But the weird thing was he left that night, and that couple of days was a regular class time. He was a real devoted student. He was always there. And for some reason, I was ill that night. I had my husband call all the students and let them know that we wouldn't have class that night. And when his number was called, his phone had been disconnected. Now it's only been 2 days, since since he was at my house telling me all this. So somehow he just kind of dropped off the planet. Never saw him again. He never contacted me again. Don't know what was going on with that. So from that, I kind of assessed the possibility that sometimes, and I'm not saying this is true with every person that experiences aliens, Bigfoot, and ghosts, but sometimes maybe it's possible that there is an occult method to project things mentally to us where we can pick up on different images that are not actually there or real. But the other thing that since then that I have found out is technology. Apparently, since the early 60s, technology has grown to the point where they can actually implant an image in your mind
Oh
And you
yeah.
can't, it's a virtual reality that you can't tell the difference between what is real out here and what has been projected to your mind. That's not only visual, but that's also words and hearing things and sending messages to you. So technology is another thing I go over in the book of possibilities of some of these things. And I'm not saying all of them, because some of these experiences go back way before the early 60s when this technology was just beginning to be developed. But some of them may be. We don't know for sure. And the mind control programs, that are out there are massive. So
Yeah.
some people, I know I worked with a woman who had UFO encounters with her brother when she was young, and then when she was older, she began to remember those and also began to re-experience them. But in her memories through hypnosis, she was also seeing the connections that when she was abducted or taken aboard a craft, oftentimes there would be like military people there. And
Yeah.
sometimes she was in a hangar with, military people and aliens at the same time. And so after all of these years now, she has kind of concluded that that was more of a mind control program that she was initiated into without her will, rather than for it to have been an actual reality. Now, there again, I'm not saying that every person experiences this as a means of a mind control program or
Yeah.
technology or an occult secret, society, projection by any means. But I think some of them could be, and it's something we probably should at least look at.
Yeah,
No,
for sure. Now go ahead.
no, I'm new into my experience, so I don't know all the terminology. So help me out. But isn't there something like something called something labs or where
Oh, my
they
lab.
is it by my lab or
Yeah, my lab.
would it be something like that, Linda, where because we've had experiencers on the show who have felt okay, they know when it's a real sighting that they have a real craft versus when it's something when they wake up, they have missing time, but they also wake up feeling like they've had anesthesia
Yeah.
versus something. So is it something like that?
Yeah, I think it very well could be, and very different. These are very different experiences that they're having too. And oftentimes, when their memory starts coming back, maybe their memory has been erased, but when it starts coming back, like this one woman, she had these memories of the connection between, the military and these UFOs. Also, her life was just turned upside down. She was stalked. They were planting things in her car, in her house, and all kinds of weird things was happening to her. But then there are other, very pure like experiences. And I think the difference is kind of what level they're on. But a lot of people, when they start bringing back memory, it's really very pure. And it's very much the alien contact that they have. Bigfoot memory doesn't seem to be as awkward. When a person has a Bigfoot encounter, they have a Bigfoot encounter. It seems to be more straightforward. But they also sometimes have missing time after a Bigfoot encounter, which seems very odd to me.
Yeah.
That's very strange.
Right.
But more than one person has told me that they have had a missing time with that. So, but yeah, I think that there are two different things that we're dealing with, or maybe more than two different things we're dealing with. One is some kind of an implanted memory, and the other one is a pure memory.
Yeah.
Okay.
It kind of takes me back to I remember Dr. Stephen Greer talking about how instead of like people that would have these experiences, like honest experiences, well, there's the other kind where these government officials, you know, they go and they whatever technology it is, they use it and they make it seem so real. Like you can see it, you can feel it, you can taste it, you can smell it. It's so real. And but really, what they're doing is they're abducting these people for whatever their agenda is. I don't know, but it just kind of reminds me of what he was talking about, and even also, doing these practices uh to bring on this stuff kind of reminds me of there was an order. I think it's still going on right now, but it was called the Order of the Golden Dawn, and I believe Aleister Crowley was even a part of it. Manifesting these beings. So I mean, I don't know if that ties in, but it just It kind
Yeah,
of,
it
to me, it
it
kind of
sounds
reminded
like
me of
it
it.
does. I mean, it sounds like it ties in. It sounds like it's, it's like there again, it's like multiple programs out there, and some of them are actually these beings, and some are maybe more of a sinister,
Yeah,
deceptive type of interaction.
I mean,
yeah, for sure.
I would think that they would have that they've known, and they meaning like the government types and these organizations had privy to all that information a long time ago, and they don't want, you know, the information or the technology to get into the wrong hands. So when an experiencer is experiencing something, this is what I think that they, and it's a true encounter or a true experience, they're on the radar. And so they come in and they do what they do to try and wipe that memory or whatever. And maybe that's why people, when they experience when they're younger and they don't remember until something triggers them later on. I don't know that. I mean, think about it. They wouldn't want that information or technology into the wrong hands either. Um, that's interesting
And
about the Bigfoot too, though. Hmm.
yeah, and the weird thing about people who experience Bigfoot, sometimes they were also contacted and told not to speak about it or not to tell about it. One
Oh,
gentleman
wow.
even said that he had had some Bigfoot encounters, and he'd just kind of been ridiculed to the point where he didn't talk about them a lot. But there was a local store that he would often go into. I think it was a hardware store, and a man was running it temporarily while his parents were dealing with some health issues. And his parents owned the store. So he was talking to him about it. And this guy seemed really open and curious, and really wanted to know. And he also told him that, he was part of a research team that was doing some real heavy duty research into like the Bigfoot phenomenon. And he was supposed to get together with this guy, talk to him more about it. And he was starting to feel really comfortable with him
Hmm.
to actually open up and give him more details of his information. And one day he drove by his house where this man was staying with his parents at the time because they were dealing with some health issues. And he drove by his house, and it was just like packed with these, and police cars and official cars, and guys in suits, out there. And they
Yeah.
were carrying boxes of files out of this house. And this guy was never seen again. I mean, he wasn't there anymore. So this guy who had the Bigfoot experience, he didn't know what happened to him. He didn't know why they were there taking all these things out of the house, but he knew one of the local police officers that he saw there that day. And he kept asking him, because they were kind of friends, but he kept asking him, well, what happened? What's going on? And he said, well, I really can't tell you much, but I can tell you that guy didn't make it. And I don't know what that meant. I don't know if it meant that he was killed, or, if he did, I don't know. I mean, it kind of sounded that way, but I don't know what they'd stumbled into. What did
Yeah.
they have? What was their research dealing with? What was in those files, and that they took everything? I don't know, but that sounds kind of like a dangerous endeavor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, also I'm reading your bio and it says you founded the Midwest Research Society.
Mhm.
Um, and that is, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, I ran that for over 10 years. It's no longer in existence, but it was primarily a research organization. We had monthly meetings, but we also traveled and investigated UFO sightings across the country, and talked with people who had had some really interesting sightings, as well. We also did conferences and things like that, but that was during my heyday of really deep investigation in the UFO field,
Yeah.
and met so many people. It was just, and then I had a radio show during that time that Midwest Research Society sponsored,
Oh, wow.
and called Anomalies, and spoke with a lot of the big names at that time. Stanton Friedman and Linda Moulton Howe
Oh,
was on the
wow.
show, and all
Linda.
of the people who knew things and deeply knew
Yeah.
things. Ted Phillips was my sidekick on that show. Now, Ted Phillips isn't as well known, but he researched Marley Woods, and he was a researcher with J. Allen Hynek, who was commissioned by the U.S. government to do the Blue Book
Yeah.
project
Yeah.
he also had a wealth of knowledge and knew people like Jacques Vallée, and he was just a real asset to the radio show. So yeah, those were good days. I'd like to get back into doing something
Yeah,
like that. But
that's awesome.
in the Bigfoot world, the same things kind of happened. I kind of stumbled into that world, but I've met and spent a lot of time with Ron Moorhead and Scott Nelson, who did the linguistics on the Sierra Sounds, and a lot of others that have just deep roots into that field, and I feel very
Yeah,
fortunate about that.
you're
So
you're uh you're living the dream that I'm chasing.
Keep chasing it; it's out there.
Yeah.
that's hilarious. So, you've also investigated paranormal activity. Do you think that there is a connection to the NHI, to that with the spirit world as well?
Yeah, I think that there's a connection between all of these things. And the one thing that I can say, when we were doing UFO research, and then the people who get out in the field and actually, have a clan area with Bigfoot, and people have haunted houses, paranormal things are happening. The thread that seems to really tie them all together is electromagnetic fields. There
Yeah.
is far more, just really high levels of electromagnetic fields in areas measurable, where these things are occurring. So I think that there is a mechanism that opens up a portal or opens up some kind of doorway,
Yeah.
where we can see things or experience things that we wouldn't normally experience. Normally we would, I'm gonna get my phone off here. Normally, we would just go about our day and we have our five senses, and, things just are normal, and we don't see stuff. And then these like hot spots or cold spots or whatever they are, kind of sweep through our area, somehow, or they stay in a location even. And then suddenly this door opens and there's all kinds of stuff happening there. Now with ghost, it seems to be more like an energy, an electrical energy that's left over from maybe a suicide or a death or something in a location. Or there's just something has happened there. You probably heard that a lot of theaters are haunted. I think it's because there's so much emotion that goes into theatrical presentations.
Yeah.
And then it just stays in that building, and the walls kind of absorb all this emotional energy, and eventually it creates this real dynamic field that then is a means for hauntings or ghost activity to occur.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. During your investigations, I want to ask you, were you at all worried that something would attach to you?
I've never had an issue with that. I lived in a house once, but actually the only ghost that I personally felt, I've measured things and I've had people with me that could see things, and I don't actually physically see the ghost, but I was living in a house, and I was sitting on the floor one night, and my husband was on the sofa, and another friend was on the sofa, and another lady was in a chair almost directly across from me. My back was at a corner of in that room. And I started feeling just this discomfort, and I couldn't have put my finger on exactly why, but there was something that something just didn't feel right. So I said, I'm going to get up and sit on the sofa. Well, the woman sitting directly across from me had spent years really becoming well-versed at seeing energy. And she didn't know what it was, but she could see some static energy moving around back there. She said it'd been there the whole time we'd been sitting there. So she could see this, I could feel it. But within a couple of days, I had a client come for hypnosis, and I did not know him. He'd never been to my house before. And I guess I didn't get my phone off. Mm-hmm. So he came in the front door, and I'm thinking, well, he didn't say anything. Normally I would go into that room, that very room that I felt that ghost. And, I kind of motioned for him to come in there. He didn't say anything. And he went back into the family room, and he looked out the sliding glass doors, and he looked around. He came back to the hall area beside that living room. And he wasn't saying anything. I'm thinking, well, what is wrong? And then finally, looking at that very corner, he said, I think my dad used to live here. And he said,
Oh, wow.
He died right there where she was seeing that energy and where I was feeling that energy. So I think there's a residue of some sort sometimes, when people pass, that they kind of leave behind them. And I think that's what we were feeling. Now, I did own a house. I do real estate investing was kind of my bread and butter. So I owned a small 2-bedroom house that had a livable attic in it. And it was rented when we purchased this house, or when we were going to purchase this house. And when we walked through and, took a look at it, there were renters there. And they said, this house is haunted. And I was like, yeah, right. But the neighbors had told them the house was haunted. And they started telling us about all of the things that were happening, lights on, off, appliances going on, off. And there was one room that seemed to be more than the others. And they had children. And there was a little fire truck there, and it had a ladder that would go up and down. And they said they would sit there and watch that ladder go up and down all by itself. It was kind of a poltergeist type of activity that would happen throughout this house. Well, we finally met the owners of the house. We'd only dealt with the lawyer before that. And come to find out, the owners had just become of age to be able to sell the house. They had lived there with their mother. And unfortunately, their mother had committed suicide in the attic of the home.
Wow.
But that house was so haunted that it even got on the local news station one year. It was ongoing haunted, because this was several years after we sold it. And, the news station went out there because this house was seriously haunted. Everybody in the neighborhood knew this house was haunted. So not dangerous, maybe, they didn't seem afraid. The tenants didn't seem afraid, but they were certainly aware that it was.
If it's haunted, it's dangerous to me in my book. I don't want to mess with it. We had this one group of investigators on, and they went through some crazy things.
Yes.
And it was a father and son duo, and his father just passed, and we don't know too much about it, but we think it's linked to the paranormal stuff, because they went through some dark things, some heavy stuff.
It was the father that went through some really dark stuff when it came to paranormal when he was young, as a young child. And I remember asking, because we talked about going on one of these investigations, and I said, well, I wouldn't want to do that. I'm sensitive. I don't want something to, I'm scared that something's going to attach, and I'm going to bring that. And he had given me the best advice. But yeah, just wanted to bring that up. It's very sad, but he did pass away recently. And it's weird because the son did share a photo of him, the day before, or a few days before, he was happy. And then the day before, or the day of, he took a selfie, and the son said it didn't even look like my father. And so, I saw the pictures, what he was talking about, and I think it could have been related to some of that, which is why I asked you if did you worry about anything attaching? Because I get worried. Like, I don't want to,
Yeah.
I'll leave that to you guys, like you, Linda, who's the expert and is not afraid of that stuff. But for me, I don't.
We're scared.
Yeah, we're scared. We've had crazy stuff happening here in the house, and that's why I asked if you thought it was related, because I think it is too. I'm not really sure how it is yet. It's just something in my gut. But since we started seeing the anomalies, the tic tac shape crafts, the long bars that you're seeing,
Yeah.
we've had some stuff.
Shadow people.
We've had stuff start happening here at the house, and we've been here 2 years. We've never had issues. We've never had helicopters flying above, shining the light down in our backyard, until after all that started happening.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And, and those seem to be correlated across the board. I mean, I knew someone, I did a research with a woman who, she was middle-aged before they started recognizing that they were having alien contact. And that came about in kind of an odd way, but her husband had had alien contact all of his life. He just now was remembering it. She didn't remember any alien contact until that point in time, but the whole household then started having awareness of this alien contact. But some really weird poltergeist-like things started happening in their home. And at one point, they had company coming to spend like a week or something. Was going to spend their vacation with them. They had literally blood running down the doors of the guest room. I mean, it's like, where does this come from? What, where does this happen? I mean, all hell broke loose in their home once they just even acknowledged that they had this alien contact. Now, that's rare. I don't know that I've even ever had another case that was like that. that they explored, the fact that they had this alien contact, and then suddenly, everything underneath the sun starts happening to them. But occasionally it does, occasionally weird things just begin to open up, like one thing opens up and everything opens up.
Yeah.
But it was definitely paranormal activity, not just, the UFOs and the alien contact.
So, real quick, you had mentioned that he was having all these experiences, but he didn't remember it. Was that something that maybe that you did, like maybe a hypnotic regression, or is that
No,
something that you do?
no, it was a weird way it came about. She was an instructor, a teacher, and
Okay.
she had assigned to her students this assignment to have them write a paper proving, if Bigfoot aliens or Bigfoot UFOs and Loch Ness Monster are real, and they could pick one. And so she had a lot of students that did their homework really well. And on the UFO stuff, there's a lot of data out there that they were turning in. And she was reading the papers, didn't buy into a word of it, no, nothing at all. And so she was taking a trip to a conference that week. She went through the airport, and the book Communion had just come out. And she saw that alien picture on the front of her. She said, well, this would be like a joke to read, because she didn't buy into any of it.
Yeah.
So she read it. She came home, and it was probably there in the house somewhere. I don't know. I don't think her husband read it at all. But she had been going to someone to help her with some chronic pain that she had, and they would do a relaxation with her to help her. And it was a weekend. Her husband developed this horrible back pain or migraine pain. I can't remember what it was. And she said, well, let me try this. My therapist helps me to relax and to be able to get rid of some pain. Let me try this and see if I can help you. But one of the things her therapist would do is take her back to the origin of when the pain started. So she took her husband back to the origin of when the pain started, and he's with his dad. He's 11 years old. He's with his dad. It's a holiday weekend. His parents ran a restaurant, but they ran out of some foods, and they had to drive like an hour away to a store to try to get some more supplies to bring back to the restaurant. About halfway there, he and his dad are stopped by an alien craft in the road. And so that surprised her, because, she's adamant about not even believing this at all,
Yeah.
from the students' papers. And now suddenly he's telling her that this has been a lifelong experience for him. And so that's kind of where the door opened for them. And from there, it was just, one thing after another of this open-endedness of contact that they both were very aware of.
So
Okay. And whenever you do your hypnosis, do you do like past life regression, or
I do past
how
life
does that work?
I do past life regressions, and then I do regressions, current life memory of what people do. Yeah, both. Yes.
Okay.
that's what I was going to ask.
We think alike.
Yeah, we think like so. Going back to the energy that you were talking about and mentioning, where certain areas have so much energy, would that be specifically where like the ley lines are at, throughout the continent, or is it something different?
Well, I think ley lines certainly can have an impact on in locations having more activity, possibly. I'm not sure. But really what I was meaning was like, like where the body itself is, like more of an electrical system. And
Yeah.
when we die, we can leave that, that residue of some of that electrical system can remain apparent on the face of the earth, where we can have memory of that, basically, especially if they had any kind of a trauma at their
Yeah.
death or suicide or something like that. Seems to be a little bit more. Lots of people pass and there's nothing, there's no residue, there's nothing that seems visible, even though, if you connect with the past, you can probably bring that memory forward if incidents that have happened at certain places. That would be more of a psychic level. And I forgot to mention, I worked as an intuitive and teaching remote viewing and teaching psychic skills for a number of years, traveled all over the country doing that as well as this other research.
Oh, wow.
So do you think that everybody has that gift of like remote viewing?
I think everyone can learn it. I didn't really have what I would say is a natural gift to just bring that up at will. So when I was around 40, about the same time I got involved with the UFO research, I started, a series of exercises and classes to be able to learn how to do more of that. and became really well versed at it. So I teach it more as a skill that, with devotion, kind of like learning to play the violin.
Yeah.
It's some people are just naturally musically talented and can play by ear. But others of us might have to, actually take lessons and really perfect that skill. So I think anyone can do it, if they want to spend the time to really devote themselves to that practice. Doesn't take that much to learn remote viewing. Honestly, that can come in very quickly. But being able to do it accurately, on demand, that's the difference between just an insight coming in, which we all get those occasionally. And then some people are, more gifted and more sensitive, like you said. And when you're more sensitive, you're going to be much more aware of all the signs, all of the impressions are going to be greater. But other people, can put it into a structured format and learn it very, very easily. But they have to do it, they have to practice it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So,
I think we all have some degree of it. Yes.
and you said this is something that you teach?
I teach this. I've actually got a new program coming out. What I recognized is, I've had a life that has really been interesting and very blessed in lots of ways. And I realized that most of the significant things that's ever happened to me, I knew in advance. And it's funny because I work primarily as a health intuitive during the years I was working, but I also taught remote viewing and, helping people to understand the body-mind connection and all of that, and helping them just be more aware, period, of everything. But I realized, just this year that my life has, every significant thing I knew in advance. And it's like, well, why have I not put a class together that teaches people how to be aware of their future? Because the future is not, time isn't linear. It's, it's more like circular, but the future is coming at us, helping us to create the moment. And if we can be aware of what the future holds, we can either avoid certain things that we don't want to be part of, or we can take take action on those opportunities that are sitting there waiting for us, in both directions.
Yeah.
So I'm putting together a class now that I call it the superpowered insight, or SPI, spy, because you're spying on your own future to be able to make better decisions for yourself. And, I think it's going to be just a really fun class. I'm going to start a podcast where we actually do like future vision on the show and do, look at people's lives, help them. And not everyone wants to devote their time to learning how to do it, which I'm always happy to teach it. But sometimes they just want to know stuff, that's coming up for them. So we're going to practice that. So that'll be a fun time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's good. Congratulations on that.
Thanks.
Yeah,
So
I would love to spy on my future.
wouldn't we
all want to spy on our future?
I know I would.
Seeing through the illusions.
Yes.
You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that sometimes, that was kind of like alluding to those projections too, that there may be illusions, or we may think we see things, and you have to just, discern a lot. And doing interviews with people who feel like they've had an experience, just running them through the whole gambit of questions that help them to discern, was this really an encounter of sort they had, or was this something maybe that was natural in their environment? It's our minds can just run away with things sometimes, so helping people to see past those things that might just be normal occurrences rather than an actual encounter with one of these beings.
So I wanted to jump into to more of the cryptid side.
Yeah.
Like let's push well, I know paranormal is tied up with all this, but let's push the Bigfoot and the UFOs to the side, and let's talk about some cryptids. Let's see, we got fairies, you got Loch Ness monster. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've discovered or researched?
Well, one of kind of early on with the Bigfoot interviews I was doing, there was a man that was talking about Bigfoot as being a fairy. And I go, you've got to be kidding me. You're talking about this big, huge, hairy creature in the woods, making all this deep sounds and stuff. And you're saying that's a fairy? I have this image in my mind of a fairy as just a little winged, pixie thing, flying around the trees and being just kind of a fun thing. But it was more the behavior, that they could come and go and be real or not real at the same time. But they were according to the Native Americans, they were often referred to as the keepers of the forest. And some
Yeah.
people have seen them actually move into a tree, just move right into the trunk of a tree and disappear within the tree, like as if that's their home or that's where, where they live. So I think, I think they're of the same world, maybe these cryptids that some people, see and come out of nowhere sometimes, the Mothman, there's all kinds of these creatures that people see, and they are not identified as being a real thing, but we really can't discount it when all five senses see them, and they actually experience these things. So I think they're real, but on what level are they real? I don't know. Are they coming into our physical realm? Or are we in an altered state where we can perceive them? Or is it some combination of the two? I don't know.
Yeah.
I know with hypnosis, in a certain state of hypnosis, you can go into a world where all of these things, seem to be real and they're very much there and you can experience them. So I think they're kind of maybe in another dimension than ours, and they kind of come and go from it. Bigfoot is a tricky one because it seems to have a lot of flesh and blood properties to it, as these others do too. But this one especially, because they reproduce, they have nests, people see them eating, they see their poop on the ground. There's all kinds of physical evidence that Bigfoot is real, their footprints. And then on the other hand, there are places like Marley Woods, which is a very unusual phenomena place, kind of like Skinwalker Ranch, where they saw in the snow Bigfoot tracks going to the middle of a frozen pond and then disappear. So did Bigfoot just disappear? I mean, so there's physical evidence, but when we look at poltergeist activity, there's physical evidence too. But we may not see the source of what's causing that physical evidence. Something's causing it, but we don't know exactly what.
Yeah, with them just disappearing like that, it kind of takes me to the hollow earth theory. Agartha, these mythical beings or creatures that are inside the earth, and maybe they are coming out, there's little portals or coming out a lake or something like that.
Yeah. Now, and especially UFOs coming out of water. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah.
It's huge. Yeah.
Going back to the cryptids though, I wonder if it's people that have seen them when they have reached a different level of dimension when they astral project.
And that could be, yeah. But a lot of people I've interviewed have seen a cryptid in the woods, whether it be a dog man, whether it be Mothman, or whether it be, Bigfoot. But they'll be fishing or hunting or just walking through the woods. But it seems like it's almost always a state where they're sort of relaxed and, could maybe have drifted off into, some kind of a space within their own mind. And then they're able to see these things. But it's usually not an agitated moment when they're seeing them. They're usually in a pretty calm, relaxed state, and usually in nature, but not always. I interviewed one man, and when he was young, like around 14 or so, he and four other guys, they lived in a small town, and there was an old abandoned warehouse that they would sometimes go to, and they'd build up. This warehouse had all the windows out, the roof was gone, it was several stories tall. But they would just go and they'd pile a bunch of wood up and they'd build up a big fire inside this warehouse and, just kick back. And one day, where this town was, they had a lot of wild dogs. They pack of dogs would just run through. I heard this pack of dogs coming through, and they saw them. Looked out the window down, several stories, and saw them running. And they ran over this big pile of coal, and they heard them like as if there was a dog fight over there. So they went to the outside and to look over there, and they saw this dog being flung from behind this coal pile, just flung, it's like, well, what could do that? What would do that? And a couple of the dogs just ran back over the pile and ran off. And then suddenly all four boys see this enormous creature like a dog man. It was standing up, it was tall, it was huge, it had the face of a dog, and it comes up over this top of this pile of coal. And one of the boys, they were all quiet, but one of the boys lets out this scream or yell or something, and it gets the attention of this dogman, and it comes walking toward them, just they're terrified them. The four boys, ran as fast as they could up to the very top level, and it had an overview that could see down to the bottom level of the building. This dogman comes inside the building, and they're thinking, oh my gosh, we're dead. They have never been so frightened before in their lives. They don't know what to do. There's no escape. They're on the fourth floor. This thing's coming in, and it's getting ready to come up to the top. And suddenly there was a train track that wasn't far from there. And suddenly they hear this train going by, and this train never blows its whistle. This is weird. It never blows its whistle. They hear this train go by every time they're out there. But this time the train is blowing its whistle. And this dogman just kind of melts away and goes away. But they think it's maybe outside somewhere. It's going to reappear. It's going to come back. Train goes by, and it took a while for them to get the courage to go down the stairs and run home. And it was a good distance back home. It was, maybe a half an hour, jaunt back to the house. And it's late by this time. And they kick back, and they're absolutely terrified. They're absolutely terrified. So they start slowly telling, people, adults in their neighborhood, and their ministers and, all kinds of people about these. And they're getting reports back from people who are of authority that that's a dangerous place out there. Other people have experienced odd things in that area. Mm-hmm. But one of the gentlemen, his minister said, it's like you were probably in a really calm state. The fire's going, which puts you in a hypnotic state in and of itself. It's going to really, all four of you probably experienced a phenomena that you would not have experienced had you not been in that state of mind. And that very well could be. Which goes back to Mary's thought about some people being more sensitive. Some people are more inclined to be in that state naturally than other people are, where their brain waves are going to show that, they just have a more dominant brainwave state that would allow them to see things more easily than other people.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Well, no, go ahead.
I'll let you first.
No, I was gonna say, so moving forward, what other projects do you have that you're working on? Like what's new for the people from you?
I'm working on the book, The Superpowered Insight, in the class for that, and the new podcast coming out. I have an ongoing YouTube channel, and of course the book Threshold to Encounters. I just spoke at a conference last week on that, met some great people who have all of these bizarre experiences. It's always nice to be around people who are also interested in the like subject matter. So that was great fun as well. Those are the only projects I have going for the time being, but that's enough because that keeps me pretty busy.
Now go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, what I wanted to ask though, going back to, because these are all the people that you've met that had experiences. It's got to, I don't want you to speak personally about somebody, but the mental state of them, does it take a toll on them? How have you seen that, and did they get help, or is it something you can help them with, or what?
A lot of the people that I worked with early on with the alien experience abductions, they were sometimes really distraught. And when they found out more detail, especially, they had to be ready for that. And it could be very disheartening. They had to really be ready to know that. And I always discouraged them from pursuing that unless they were ready for it.
Yeah.
Some people, they would come to terms with it, and eventually you have to come to terms with something that is that deeply personal. Some of them just became very angry that this was happening to them, just blamed the aliens, and was just very, very frustrated about it. And other people began to see it as maybe a time of learning, and maybe learning from the aliens, but also people had different aliens that they were experiencing. And some aliens were teachers, and was sharing things with them and helping them to understand kind of a bigger perspective of the world. and other aliens were just kind of cold and indifferent, didn't seem to care about them very much. So, so those were experiences that made a big difference in how they were able to cope with it as well. People who have Bigfoot experiences, same thing. You know, sometimes they would be young and they would just have a Bigfoot encounter suddenly, and it would keep them from ever going back in the woods again. I mean, they were just emotionally distraught. I interviewed one man who was a psychologist, and he knew how it impacted him when he saw his first Bigfoot. So he has written a book and is working with people who have these experiences and have nowhere to go. Because as you know, the world as a whole does not believe Bigfoot exists, doesn't believe the cryptids exist at all. And so they're getting ridicule and just a really ostracized, basically, from being able to share the information. It's better now because shows like yours and mine and other people that are able to give them a forum where they're not ridiculed, and where we openly accept these possibilities, that these are real, genuine beings that they're encountering, and that their experiences are real. It validates them, in other words. I think that helps a lot. The people who have paranormal experience and people who have encounters with alien beings and cryptids overall, I think they have to have someone who takes them seriously, who validates that these experiences are theirs. Might not be my experience, but it's their experience, and be able to give them a place where they're safe in talking about it. So that's always helpful.
Right.
So we asked this to most of our guests. With somebody who's experiencing this phenomena, and say they're scared to come out and talk about it, they think they're going to get ridiculed, or they don't know how their family is going to think about it, what advice would you give them?
Well, I think that number one, find your groups. If there's a local meeting group, get invested in those people that also share that. That's not everywhere though. So the other one would be social media. Oftentimes there are groups in social media, and some of those are more serious than others, but sometimes you can go in and just read what other people are saying, and you'll know, if you can identify with them or not. There are also a lot of conferences around that, you're going to find a lot of like-minded people when you go to those, and be able to have some sharing experience with people who have also had the same experiences that you've had, or similar experiences to what you've had. So there are a lot of people now and a lot of venues now where you can find support. I think that if you're just going to tell someone who's skeptic and doesn't have the experience itself, then you don't know how they're going to respond. It can be a little difficult. Some people kind of get hell-bent on proving that these things exist. That's going to be a hard go, because until we step over some kind of a magic line in the sand, I think that people are still going to think they're not real.
Actually, moving forward, we're going to start a little spin-off of the show where it's going to be strictly focused on the cryptid. And our first topic is going to be fairies. And moving forward, if you want to come on the show and maybe talk with us about it, give us your insights, maybe help out, we'd love to have you back on.
Love to, yeah. I think that's a fascinating subject, and for eons, people have talked about all of these nature creatures, the fairies and the elves, and they're everywhere, and I don't think that was just made up. I think people actually experience these things.
That's true. We don't so I say it all the time, but Tony and I, we started, he wanted to start this podcast, and basically, but first let me just say how important this is. I was one of these people that, oh, I don't care to hear about all that stuff. Oh, I don't want to, and Tony was already into this 15 years prior, into his journey of, the ancient aliens and the whole history and all that. But he wanted to do this podcast because he felt that there were people that needed a safe place to come to. So we definitely went in there with thinking, it's not, we're not investigative journalists. We're not going to question people. If this is their truth, we're going to allow them to speak it without judgment, without bullies, without any of that. So that's what this podcast is about. And, and for me personally, I've always been since a child been able to astral project even into my adulthood. And so that's something I never told people until I met Tony, and Tony was talking about, all these things and learning all this ancient knowledge and stuff. And so I opened up to him. So that definitely want people to continue to seek out people such as yourself, people in the community that have experienced or, that know knowledge of this to, seek, us out versus telling a family member who may not believe you and make you feel like you're crazy. And we definitely don't want that. So we will never judge anybody that would like to come on and tell their story. Um, I'm learning, I'm learning. So I enjoy having people such as yourself come on and sharing your knowledge with us. That's something I'm excited for to have. It's if you would love to, like Tony said, we would love for you for sure to come on, and especially with the new topic that we're going to talk about, because I have no idea.
Yes.
I'm going to leave that to the experts, but I'll just be here just to be here.
Sounds good. Sounds like fun.
Yeah, Tony.
All right, Linda. Well, real quick, if you want to shout out where people can get in contact with you.
Sure. Well, first of all, my book, Thresholds to Encounters, you can get that on Amazon.com. It's out there. I have a Facebook group called Bigfoot Cryptid Midwest. If you're interested in joining that, and also I post everything I do pretty much there. Also, you can just get in touch with me through my email, just lindaeastburn@gmail.com. If you want to directly contact me, I'm always looking for people that have experiences and things that that I haven't heard before, or even things that I have heard before, because it's always nice to know that we don't live isolated, but we live in a world where people can talk about these things openly.
Yeah, for sure.
Wonderful.
And let's talk about them openly.
Yeah. There's also Linda Eastburn YouTube channel that has like 400 interviews on it. I have some UFO activity, some paranormal, and a whole lot of Bigfoot interviews. So yeah, it's broad.
Definitely need to check that out. So that's the Linda Eastburn YouTube
channel. Yeah,
YouTube channel.
YouTube channel. Mm-hmm.
There you go, guys. Make sure to check that out as well, so you can go in, dive into them 400 something interviews. That's something we're going to do.
And check out that book.
Yeah.
Don't forget to check out that book
on Amazon. Get it.
Man, thank you for coming on the show. I really enjoyed having you on.
Thank you. This has been fun. I've enjoyed both of you. Lots of good energy here.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
People say that I'm one of the greats. I'm the one that you love to hate. Shake them up like a quake. All your feelings and turn to dispose them like haters I throw away. I'm forever blessed. Got the spirit that's holy controlling me. I ain't gotta coordinate. I just sit back and buckle my bells, and I'm ready to blaze in the stars of my destination. Melted broadcast, open vision. Melted broadcast, open vision. Melted broadcast, open vision. Melted broadcast, open vision.